Infections. God spoke to Moses and Aaron, when someone has a swelling or a blister or a shiny spot on the skin that might signal a serious skin disease on the body, bring him to Aaron the priest or to one of his priest's sons. The priest will examine the sore on the skin. If the hair in the sore has turned white and the sore appears more than skin deep, it is a serious skin disease and infectious. After the priest has examined it, he will pronounce the person unclean. If the shiny spot on the skin is white but appears to be only on the surface and the hair has not turned white, the priest will quarantine the person for 7 days. On the 7th day the priest will examine it again. If, in his judgment, the sore is the same and has not spread, the priest will keep him in quarantine for another 7 days. On the 7th day the priest will examine him a second time. If the sore has faded and hasn't spread, the priest will declare him clean. It is a harmless rash. The person can go home and wash his clothes, he is clean. But if the sore spreads after he has shown himself to the priest and been declared clean, he must come back again to the priest who will conduct another examination. If the sore has spread, the priest will pronounce him unclean. It is a serious skin disease and infectious. Whenever someone has a serious and infectious skin disease, you must bring him to the priest. The priest will examine him. If there is a white swelling in the skin, the hair is turning white, and there is an open sore in the swelling, it is a chronic skin disease. The priest will pronounce him unclean. But he doesn't need to quarantine him because he's already given his diagnosis of unclean. If a serious disease breaks out that covers all the skin from head to foot, wherever the priest looks, the priest will make a thorough examination. If the disease covers his entire body, he will pronounce the person with the sore clean. Since it has turned all white, he is clean. But if they are open, running sores, he is unclean. The priest will examine the open sores and pronounce him unclean. The open sores are unclean, they are evidence of a serious skin disease. But if the open sores dry up and turn white, he is to come back to the priest who will re-examine him. If the sores have turned white, the priest will pronounce the person with the sores clean. He is clean. When a person has a boil and it heals and in place of the boil there is white swelling or a reddish-white shiny spot, the person must present himself to the priest for an examination. If it looks like it has penetrated the skin and the hair in it has turned white, the priest will pronounce him unclean. It is a serious skin disease that has broken out in the boil. But if the examination shows that there is no white hair in it and it is only skin deep and has faded, the priest will put him in quarantine for 7 days. If it then spreads over the skin, the priest will diagnose him as unclean. It is infectious. But if the shiny spot has not changed and hasn't spread, it's only a scar from the boil. The priest will pronounce him clean. When a person has a burn on his skin and the raw flesh turns into a reddish-white or white shiny spot, the priest is to examine it. If the hair has turned white in the shiny spot and it looks like it's more than skin deep, a serious skin disease has erupted in the area of the burn. The priest will pronounce him unclean. It is a serious skin disease and infectious. But if on examination there is no white hair in the shiny spot and it doesn't look to be more than skin deep but has faded, the priest will put him in quarantine for 7 days. On the 7th day the priest will re-examine him. If by then it has spread over the skin, the priest will diagnose him as unclean. It is a serious skin disease and infectious. If by that time the shiny spot has stayed the same and has not spread but has faded, it is only a swelling from the burn. The priest will pronounce him clean. It's only a scar from the burn. If a man or woman develops a sore on the head or chin, the priest will offer a diagnosis. If it looks as if it is under the skin and the hair in it is yellow and thin, he will pronounce the person ritually unclean. It is an itch, an infectious skin disease. But if when he examines the itch, he finds it is only skin deep and there is no black hair in it, he will put the person in quarantine for 7 days. On the 7th day he will re-examine the sore. If the itch has not spread, there is no yellow hair in it, and it looks as if the itch is only skin deep, the person must shave. Except for the itch, the priest will send him back to quarantine for another 7 days. If the itch has not spread, and looks to be only skin deep, the priest will pronounce him clean. The person can go home and wash his clothes, he is clean. But if the itch spreads after being pronounced clean, the priest must re-examine it. If the itch has spread in the skin, he doesn't have to look any farther. For yellow hair, for instance, he is unclean. But if he sees that the itch is unchanged and black hair has begun to grow in it, the itch is healed. The person is clean and the priest will pronounce him clean. When a man or woman gets shiny or white shiny spots on the skin, the priest is to make an examination. If the shiny spots are dull white, it is only a rash that has broken out, the person is clean. When a man loses his hair and goes bald, he is clean. If he loses his hair from his forehead, he is bald and he is clean. But if he has a reddish-white sore on scalp or forehead, it means a serious skin disease is breaking out. The priest is to examine it. If the swollen sore on his scalp or forehead is reddish-white like the appearance of the sore of a serious skin disease, he has a serious skin disease and is unclean. The priest has to pronounce him unclean because of the sore on his head. Any person with a serious skin disease must wear torn clothes, leave his hair loose and unbrushed, cover his upper lip, and cry out, "Unclean! Unclean!" As long as anyone has the sores, that one continues to be ritually unclean. That person must live alone, he or she must live outside the camp. If clothing, woolen or linen clothing, woven or knitted cloth of linen or wool, leather or leatherwork, is infected with a patch of serious fungus, and if the spot in the clothing or the leather or the woven or the knitted material or anything made of leather is greenish or rusty, that is a sign of serious fungus. Show it to the priest. The priest will examine the spot and then confiscate the material for 7 days. On the 7th day he will re-examine the spot. If it has spread in the garment, the woven or knitted or leather material, it is the spot of a persistent serious fungus and the material is unclean. He must burn the garment. Because of the persistent and contaminating fungus, the material must be burned. But if when the priest examines it the spot has not spread in the garment, the priest will command the owner to wash the material that has the spot, and he will confiscate it for another 7 days. He'll then make another examination after it has been washed. If the spot hasn't changed in appearance, even though it hasn't spread, it is still unclean. Burn it up, whether the fungus has affected the back or the front. If, when the priest makes his examination, the spot has faded after it has been washed, he is to tear the spot from the garment. But if it reappears, it is a fresh outbreak. Throw whatever has the spot in the fire. If the garment is washed and the spot has gone away, then wash it a second time, it is clean. These are the instructions regarding a spot of serious fungus in clothing of wool or linen, woven or knitted material, or any article of leather, for pronouncing them clean or unclean. God spoke to Moses. These are the instructions for the infected person at the time of his cleansing. First, bring him to the priest. The priest will take him outside the camp and make an examination. If the infected person has been healed of the serious skin disease, the priest will order 2 live, clean birds, some cedar wood, scarlet thread, and hyssop to be brought for the one to be cleansed. The priest will order him to kill one of the birds over fresh water in a clay pot. The priest will then take the live bird with the cedar wood, the scarlet thread, and the hyssop and dip them in the blood of the dead bird over fresh water and then sprinkle the person being cleansed from the serious skin disease 7 times and pronounce him clean. Finally, he will release the live bird in the open field. The cleansed person, after washing his clothes, shaving off all his hair, and bathing with water, is clean. Afterwards he may again enter the camp, but he has to live outside his tent for 7 days. On the 7th day, he must shave off all his hair, from his head, beard, eyebrows, all of it. He then must wash his clothes and bathe all over with water. He will be clean. The next day, the 8th day, he will bring 2 lambs without defect and a yearling ewe without defect, along with roughly 6 quarts of fine flour mixed with oil. The priest who pronounces him clean will place him and the materials for his offerings in the presence of God at the entrance to the tent of meeting. The priest will take one of the lambs and present it and the pint of oil as a compensation offering and lift them up as a wave offering before God. He will slaughter the lamb in the place where the absolution offering and the whole burnt offering are slaughtered, in the holy place, because like the absolution offering, the compensation offering belongs to the priest, it is most holy. The priest will now take some of the blood of the compensation offering and put it on the right earlobe of the man being cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Following that he will take some oil and pour it into the palm of his left hand and then with the finger of his right hand sprinkle oil 7 times before God. The priest will put some of the remaining oil on the right earlobe of the one being cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, placing it on top of the blood of the compensation offering. He will put the rest of the oil on the head of the man being cleansed and make atonement for him before God. Finally the priest will sacrifice the absolution offering and make atonement for the one to be cleansed from his uncleanness, slaughter the whole burnt offering and offer it with the grain offering on the altar. He has made atonement for him. He is clean. If he is poor and cannot afford these offerings, he will bring 1 male lamb as a compensation offering to be offered as a wave offering to make atonement for him, and with it a couple of quarts of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering, a pint of oil. and 2 doves or pigeons which he can afford, one for an absolution offering and the other for a whole burnt offering. On the 8th day he will bring them to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting before the presence of God. The priest will take the lamb for the compensation offering together with the pint of oil and wave them before God as a wave offering. He will slaughter the lamb for the compensation offering, take some of its blood and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest will pour some of the oil into the palm of his left hand, and with his right finger sprinkle some of the oil from his palm 7 times before God. He will put some of the oil that is in his palm on the same place as he put the blood of the compensation offering, on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest will take what is left of the oil in his palm and put it on the head of the one to be cleansed, making atonement for him before God. At the last, he will sacrifice the doves or pigeons which are within his means, one as an absolution offering and the other as a whole burnt offering along with the grain offering. Following this procedure, the priest will make atonement for the one to be cleansed before God. These are the instructions to be followed for anyone who has a serious skin disease and cannot afford the regular offerings for his cleansing. God spoke to Moses and Aaron, "When you enter the land of Canaan, which I'm giving to you as a possession, and I put a serious fungus in a house in the land of your possession, the householder is to go and tell the priest, 'I have some kind of fungus in my house.' The priest is to order the house vacated until he can come to examine the fungus, so that nothing in the house is declared unclean. When the priest comes and examines the house, if the fungus on the walls of the house has greenish or rusty swelling that appears to go deeper than the surface of the wall, the priest is to walk out the door and shut the house up for 7 days. On the 7th day he is to come back and conduct another examination. If the fungus has spread in the walls of the house, he is to order that the stones affected by the fungus be torn out and thrown in a garbage dump outside the city. He is to make sure the entire inside of the house is scraped and the plaster that is removed be taken away to the garbage dump outside the city. Then he is to replace the stones and replace after the house. If the fungus breaks out again in the house after the stones have been torn out and the house has been scraped and plastered, the priest is to come and conduct an examination. If the fungus has spread, it is a malignant fungus. The house is unclean. The house has to be demolished, its stones, wood, and plaster are to be removed to the garbage dump outside the city. Anyone who enters the house while it is closed up is unclean until evening. Anyone who sleeps or eats in the house must wash his clothes. But if when the priest comes and conducts his examination, he finds that the fungus has not spread after the house has been replaced astered, the priest is to declare that the house is clean, the fungus is cured. He then is to purify the house by taking 2 birds, some cedar wood, scarlet thread, and hyssop. He will slaughter 1 bird over fresh water in a clay pot. Then he will take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet thread, and the living bird, dip them in the blood of the killed bird and the fresh water and sprinkle the house 7 times, cleansing the house with the blood of the bird, the fresh water, the living bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet thread. Last of all, he will let the living bird loose outside the city in the open field. He has made atonement for the house is clean. These are the procedures to be followed for every kind of serious skin disease or itch, for mildew or fungus on clothing or in a house, and for a swelling or blister or shiny spot in order to determine when it is unclean and when it is clean. These are the procedures regarding infectious skin diseases and mildew and fungus.